Hang on just a second, sending a text to our blog mistress. I wrote a column today. It'll be up at rightlyconcerned.com this afternoon on education reform. Brian Fisher's my name. The program is Focal Point. And, the title that I hung on the column is Comprehensive Education Reform in 61 Words. Well, the problem is I'd gone to the feature that does counting for you, and apparently I had counted the characters and not the words. I thought I'd put the word count function in there, but it kicked back 61, so I just put 61 words in the title. Turns out there's only 14 words in my comprehensive immigration reform proposal. And I'll go through this maybe in the second hour, but I'm proposing a way to completely reform our education system, and I can propose education reform in 14 words. All it takes is 14 words to describe the education reform that would completely transform America's educational system. But, math is hard, and so I just had to send an email to her from my iPhone saying, hey, we gotta change the title on that thing before it goes public. Number to call if you want to join the program, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Maybe we can grab one soundbite while we're waiting for people to call in. Talk about anything you want. Talk about Valentine's Day. Happy to talk about what the media has done with Chris Dorner, the way they've lionized him, they've idolized him, and savaged Marco Rubio. Now, Jack Lew, this is clip 5. Jack Lew is a guy that's being nominated by President Obama to be the next Secretary of the Treasury, next to Secretary of the Treasury. Now, to replace Timothy Geithner. Remember, Timothy Geithner is a guy that couldn't even do his taxes using TurboTax. He couldn't even get his taxes right using TurboTax, and yet he's going to run the United States Treasury. These are the kind of buffoons, and I use that term deliberately, the kind of buffoons that President Obama continues to promote to these positions of importance. Now, President Obama back in 2008 just absolutely got brutal on Mitt Romney because he had money invested in businesses that operated out of the Cayman Islands. Cayman Islands is a well-known tax haven, and Barack Obama called it a notorious tax haven, even fingered the building where some of the companies that Romney had invested in were headquartered, and says this is a huge tax scam. This is a tax scam. That was the term that Barack Obama used. Now he nominates Jack Lew to be the next Secretary of the Treasury. Now this Lew, by the way, took a huge bonus in 2009 after the financial collapse of a bank. And he got, where was the bonus he got? $450,000. What was the total? $945,000. He got a $945,000 bonus. That's your money. That's my money. Went into his pocket after this bank had collapsed. That's a reward he got from this bank with your money and my money after his bank had collapsed. 945 G's for overseeing a collapsing institution. Now, it turns out that Jack Lew also has money stashed in the Cayman Islands. In fact, it turns out he was managing 113 accounts that are located in the Cayman Islands, 113 of them. So naturally, this is a problem. If this is the biggest tax scam in history, then why has President Obama nominated him to be Secretary of the Treasury? Now, here's clip 5. Max Baucus, who's a Democrat and trying to help this guy out, trying to head off the damage here, do some damage control, asked him about this investment in the Cayman Islands. Let's listen.
Why was the investment in the Cayman Islands?
Senator, I actually don't know why it was organized. I was not involved in setting up the fund.
Did you know at the time it was Cayman?
At the time I invested, I was aware that it was an international fund investing in emerging markets. I knew that much of the personnel for the fund was based in London. I actually didn't know at the time what the address of the partnership was.
So everybody's supposed to give him a pass. I didn't know. I was ignorant. I was clueless. I have no idea. Now, Mitt Romney should have known. And we got to beat him up, whether he knew it or not. Doesn't make any difference. He still had money in the Cayman Islands, so we're going to go after him hammer and tongs. But Senator Baucus, I had no idea. I was clueless about where this fund that I was invested in was located. All right, well, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Kurt in Grants Pass, Oregon. Kurt, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Brian. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to you.
There's many things on my mind, one about Christians and not Christians being married. But the more important thing is this former policeman that went on a killing spree. Uh-huh. Yes, it's bad. But what have we done in America? 40 years of killing babies. The Republicans had the House and Senate back in the 90s, and they did nothing about it. And the only way I feel that abortion will be done away with if the Lord Jesus Christ comes back, because I have a thing called, I heard in 1982, Global 2000, we got to reduce the population down to a certain amount for a one-world order. President Bush Sr. talked about it. Now in Oregon, Washington, and Montana, we have euthanasia legalized. Is dealing with how to get rid of people. And there was another about Survivor, who's, I forgot the exact name, but this is just as big a crime. Talking about Dr. Tiller. Are you familiar with Phil Klein?
Sure, yeah, the former Attorney General in the state of Kansas.
I have 2 articles from my paper that I've saved. Phil Klein was on Dr. Dobson's Family Talk a couple years ago, how he was hindered from shutting Dr. Tiller down.
Yeah, there were 107 violations, criminal violations that he'd found at abortion clinics, including Dr. Tiller's, and Kathleen Sebelius was the governor of the state of Kansas at the time. She not only shut him down, they wound up filing charges against him. Right. He was the one that wound up being in the hot seat for trying to prosecute this guy that was killing babies who were viable.
There was a person from Grants Pass who tried to kill Dr. Tiller before, Scott Roden. Now, people criticize Scott Roden for killing Dr. Tiller. He took the law into his hands, but our government would not shut him down, so somebody had to. I have on from the History Channel a thing about Dr. Tiller. It was all praising how he did good for the women, but nothing about the killing of the babies. So
all right, Kurt. Well, listen, I appreciate the call. Thank you for that. And, you know, again, we should not take the law into our own hands. That's what Romans 12 is all about. That's the job of government. We've got a huge problem now because justice is not being done for these unborn babies. 55 million of them have been butchered in the womb. We've got the innocent blood filling our streets. Biblical, that's what the biblical cause of God's judgment coming on the ancient nation of Israel. And you never hear any of these pundits like Chris Matthews talking about Scott Roden, who shot George Tiller in cold blood. It was murder, should have paid a penalty for it. You never hear them saying, I wonder, we got 55 million innocent babies slaughtered. Maybe this guy had a point. Should we have a conversation about the issue of the sanctity of life? Maybe this can be a conversation starter. Maybe this guy's Denzel Washington. Maybe he's got a legitimate grievance and he wanted to right a wrong, and maybe we ought to be talking about that. No, you never anything like that. All right, Kurt, appreciate the call. Let's go to Sherry in Cordova, Illinois. 888-589-8840, by the way, 888-589-8840. Sherry, Cordova, Illinois, what's on your mind?
Hi, Brian. Thank you for taking my call. I wanted to mention something that's been on my heart about Rand Paul. His words were so strong, clear and concise. The message is great, but is it correct to characterize himself as a social liberal? Or to characterize him as a social liberal?
Yeah, I'm going to have some problems with Rand Paul when it comes to those issues because he did pick up some libertarianism from his father. He wants the federal government to stay completely out of the marriage issue. That's not possible because the federal government hires people. The federal government pays people. The federal government gives spousal benefits. So the federal government's got to define what a marriage is and is not. Now, he supports Kentucky's marriage amendment. He believes this ought to be a state issue. So he supports one man, one woman marriage. He supports Kentucky for amending its constitution to define marriage as one man and one woman. And I'm probably going to have some issues with him on immigration. He believes in amnesty once Congress has certified that the border is secure, and that's a sticking point for me as well. So I think it would probably go too far to say that he's even a social moderate or a social liberal. I've had some exchanges with people on his staff indicating he does not favor drug legalization like his father did. But if he does begin to develop, and I believe he's going to run for president in 2016, I don't think there's any question about it, those questions are we're going to have to pursue him on some of those issues.
I think he's got a lot of good qualities and good views. I don't know if he has a Christian worldview. I guess it's kind of in a nutshell what I'm saying, but kind of along those lines. And I won't keep you longer. But I was getting my oil change this morning, and I was waiting, and there was stock market news on the TV, kind of a neutral kind of thing, and everybody's sitting in the waiting room. And they were talking about market uncertainty, and I just said to a couple people around me, I said, of course there's market uncertainty. I said, when you have a free market republic, a democratic republic, and the government starts interfering with private sector business, there's going to be uncertainty. And little statements like that. Another time I was in a doctor's office about a week ago, and they had some homosexual person who came out of the closet, and this TV program they had on was celebrating him. I just looked across the way, and I said to the people who were there, staring at the TV like a bunch of sheep, and I said, you know what? I said, we're going to love that man all the way to hell if we don't speak up and tell him that God doesn't want sexual sin for us. And so I just a little speaking up and trying to do it boldly, but without turning people off. But it's intimidating, but it's important. That's things we can do.
Well, it sure is, Sherry, and thank you for speaking boldly and standing for the truth. We do not have to be obnoxious about this. There are ways that we can do it that are straightforward, that are direct, that are courteous, that are civil, and yet still represent a declaration of truth. And Sherry's right. First time you do it, second time you do it, it's going to be pretty intimidating. It's going to be frightening, might even be terrifying. But if you start doing it, if you just start speaking up in circumstances where it's appropriate to speak up, where it's the topic of conversation or somebody else has expressed a point of view and you've got a response to that, let's speak up, make our voices heard. Focal Point AF for Talk back after the news.